In this video, what I want to do is run through question 2, which is about the bass part. So in the first instance, what I want to mention is that whenever you drag and drop a MIDI file into Ableton, just be aware that a window will pop up and it will ask you if you want to import any data. I always say no on this, but however, if you did say yes, you're not going to break the system whatsoever. That will just import any sort of like tempo or time signature information. So the question is, they want you to import this MIDI file, which obviously will start at bar 2. They also want you to import this bass example. This is a very common question within Edexcel. They're going to have you listen to something and then replicate it. So just notice how I put the bass example on the correct bars. And again, basically what they want you to do is listen to this and replicate this sound on this MIDI track. Okay, so let's have a look at question 2a. Basically what they want you to do is use the bass example as a resource, and they want you to get a sound extremely close to that. Also, make sure that your octave matches this. So in Ableton, the first thing is this. If we just looked at the octave, I'm going to, on this bass example, I'm going to go into my audio effects, and I'm going to drag and drop a spectrum onto that track. The spectrum will allow me to analyze the frequencies and pitch. So as an example to this, notice how these waveforms, I can hover my mouse over and I will get in the box to my lower left the actual pitch. In this example, this is now A0. So now that I know that this MIDI track needs to start off at A0, what I can now do is determine where to move this up or down by the octave. So there's two ways that you can find out which octave that you're on the MIDI file. In the first instance, I can open up and I can then fold this. And as you'll see here, this A is on A3 rather than on A0. So that should then tell you that this is going to be 3 octaves out. So notice how I've put an operator onto my track. And in the operator, what you've got is a transpose button here. Don't forget that there are 12 semitones for every octave. 12 times 3 would be 36. So that's how I found out where to put this. So now that I've got this octave correct, I'm now going to go back into my oscillators and I'm just going to listen to the original bass track and just make sure that my sound matches that bass track. This is a more of a visual hint, just in case you can't figure out by ear how this sound should be replicated. So notice how I'm going to now zoom in and I'm going to have a look at this waveform here. And usually this waveform, if I keep zooming in, it may show a triangle or a square or a sine wave. And that's another hint that may give you the answer here. So now that I found out my octave and now that I roughly know what waveform that I want on my oscillator, I'm going to move on now to question B. Okay, so 2B talks about timing errors within bar 18. So I'm going to pause right there. So I'm going to go to bar 18 and highlight the whole bar, and I'm going to loop this. Again, this is best practice just in case you need to see where exactly you need to edit this MIDI file. So now that I've got this part playing and I know which area that I need to move these notes on, Edexcel have asked you to make sure that the rhythm is the same as bar 20. So what you could always do is just literally move this down to where bar 20 is and have a look about what they've done and then go back to your bar 18. As a reminder about this, moving notes horizontally, so in other words, left or right, is going to be your rhythm. Pitch is going to be up and down. So on 2D, what they're now asking you to do is to replicate a velocity. So as a reminder, in Ableton, when you have a MIDI event, the top part is where all your notes are, and the bottom part down here is where your velocity is. I'm just going to move this a little bit higher just so that you can see it. All of these values are going to be your velocities for each one of these notes. The exam says that what they want you to do is to match the velocity from bar 3 into bar 4. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to zoom in. And what you'll notice is that in bar 3, that these velocity events are different from bar 4. And all you need to do now is to edit these. So the quickest way to do this is literally just to move this one down. Another way to do this is to hold down your command button on a Mac and basically hover your mouse over that note. And as you'll see, I can now get the velocity. And with this now, I can move this with my mouse up and down. So I just wanted to quickly look at the mark scheme for this. Notice how they've given you a particular bar that they want to look at. In other words, bar 18 for the rhythm. Regarding the velocities, again, notice how that they've got this matched from bar 3 into bar 4.